Got my fancy bag here from OPI. Just wanted to show you before bring up the PowerPoint. Got a few things to share with you regarding Indian Education for All. And just, one of the honors I have working at OPI is I get to go out to schools all across the state of Montana and present information about Indian Education for All. And recently, the last presentation I did was in Indianapolis at a national conference looking at state social studies standards for the entire nation. And I got 20 minutes on their agenda, so I can really talk fast if I need to. But just scroll to the next one. Montana is the only state out of the 50 that has it written into our state constitution that we will teach about American Indians. And that is really unique. And a lot of other states say, how did we do that? And I say, well, it wasn't me. It was 100 delegates that came together in 1972, all non-Indian, that had the foresight and wisdom to put this in our state constitution. And this is what forms the basis of what I do in my job, what Brandy does in her job, what Henry does, and for a lot of us in this room. And so, here's the law of Indian Education for All. And what I always like to focus on, it says every Montanan. And the last part says in a culturally responsive manner. And we heard examples of that already today, what it means to be culturally responsive in regards to American Indians. And I'll have to quote my friend Dr. Nicholas Roman. He talks about, and this is reaffirmed this afternoon again, the inclusion of the whole story. And we haven't had the whole story for many of our years. And that's the exciting part of Indian Ed for All, is getting to tell that Native perspective, or Native American perspectives on things like Thanksgiving and ceremony and history. And I really like what he said about, for our children and our children's children, because think about that future. Think about what they're going to learn. Think about those small changes you're talking about, something shifting. And I think we're seeing that in Montana. It says we all work with tribes, and that's one of the exciting parts of my job, is going out and working with tribal leaders all across the state of Montana. Anytime you see a piece of curriculum from OPI come out, know that it's been vetted by some tribal educator. We work with all the tribal education departments in the state, and that's where I get a lot of my bad jokes too. But go to the next one. Indian Ed for All, we've had a lot of impacts here in Montana, but South Dakota adopted Jetty essential understandings for the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota in South Dakota. We work close with their state. Colorado adopted essential understandings for Colorado Indian education. Maine has developed essential understandings for Wabanaki. National Museum of the American Indians, the Smithsonian, is working to develop a national set of essential understandings based on our Montana model, which is pretty cool. They came out to Montana, spent 3 days here, visited with us at OPI, Historical Society, local museum staff, other Indian Ed faculty. I'm actually here with a colleague, Jennifer. Jennifer Wade. She has to put up with all my bad jokes. Those staff met with Iowana, they met with school teachers, and but it was neat to have that interaction. And by the way, Ed Shootman sends his greetings to you, Henry, because I told him you'd be here. He was one of the staff members of the Museum of the American Indian. He is Muskogee, and he's from Oklahoma. I like to say, you've heard that Okie from Muskogee? Well, he's a Muskogee from Okie. You can tell Ed I said that. But there's been articles written in academic research journals. Iowana and I have published articles together. Dissertations have been written. There's scholars from other countries that have come here, Australia, looking at Indian Ed for All, talking about what they can do regarding Aboriginal education in their country. So it's pretty exciting to see this momentum. One of the things we did in Montana that I mentioned, we created these 7 essential understandings. This was done in 1999. Denise Juneau, she was the only Indian Ed specialist at OPI, brought together leaders from all the tribes to create these. And these are powerful. And one of the neat things we've done at OPI is develop curriculum for every one of these, for math, for science, for social studies, for language arts, family and consumer science. Where's Holly? And so, we do a lot of curriculum development, and we do a lot of professional development for each of these. And so that's an exciting thing for me in my job, and what Jennifer does in her work too. One of our accreditation standards talks about books and materials which reflect authentic historical and contemporary portrayals, because a lot of people still have that stereotype about Indians being in the past. And I was with actually Megan's husband, Dr. Shane Doyle, and Dr. Megan Doyle over there. But Dr. Doyle and I were singing at an elementary school here in Bozeman, and I was with Shane is Crow, and I was with a Blackfeet friend and myself, and this was like a class of second graders, and we were singing songs. We sang powwow songs, and after we got done, we said, "Anybody have any questions?" This little guy raised his hand. He goes, "Are you guys real Indians?" But what was in his mind, right? The past, beads and feathers, and so it's interesting. So we do a lot of work on contemporary issues. But it's all about deconstructiveness. And this is some research by Griffin and Marciano, but I always use this quote in workshops. But you've all heard of this concept of hegemony and who's writing the textbooks. Classic examples are the westward movement, right? We all have that, we study that, but the Blackfeet to the Crow to the Cheyenne, it wasn't a westward movement, it was an eastern invasion. And so looking at different perspectives. Anybody in here watch the Democratic and Republican national conventions? And what's that? Half of it? I'm one of them? I'm a government teacher, a former government teacher, so I like to watch all sides of stuff, even though I lean to one side. I won't say which side. Oh. but that's on tape, isn't it? Oh, no. But one of the things a lot of those speakers said, we're a nation of immigrants. Anybody hear that? Heard that comment? To me, that's a very biased statement, right? Because not all of us immigrated here. Like what Henry said, our origin stories connected to place. And for, when I hear that term, that's very biased. That's an example of hegemony. Nation of immigrants. Well, not quite true for everybody. And so let me give you some examples here. Go to the next one. All right, here's this book, and Ewan just finished doing a workshop on this. Some people have probably seen this, but just give me some shout outs. Who's this up here? Kokopelli, right? From what part of the U.S.? Southwest. How about over here, in that corner? Katina, from what tribe? Hopi, right? By the way, do you know what IHOP means in Indian country? Mixed up Hopi. I told that joke to a bunch of Hopi people. All right, so you think maybe Southwest, right? But go to the next one. Montana Native Americans. And there's books for...
We looked at books. We gave to Kistana the book on Maine Native Americans, and it looks exactly the same.
Same cover?
Alaska Native Americans. Yeah.
There's one on Alaska, too?
Yeah.
Same exact cover?
It doesn't even say Alaska Natives. It says Alaska Native Americans. Yeah, but there are 14 pages on Amazon.com of her stuff.
Yep. So Ewan and I have been talking about writing an article about this book, a critical review. And it's not that the author, I think, intends bias. And I actually got so upset when I was working here at MSU, I called up this author. And I said, Ms. Marsh, I said, I'm reading your book about Montana Indians, and I noticed there was a lot of inaccurate information. And I said, where'd you get your information? She said, from other books. And I said, well, have you ever come out to Montana and talked to Native Americans? She says, no. And so it was interesting, she's using just older resources to write about Montana Indians without ever coming out here. And I find that fascinating. But I don't think she means any ill will, but it's just an example of that hegemony, that bias. Here's something to think about. Halloween and Indians. How many people seen people dressed up as Indians on Halloween, right? And my youngest daughter, Sapphire, by the way, she knows that song I sang. She knows that 2 nights ago we were singing at nighttime. I tuck her in with songs, and it's so neat to hear her sing that song. And then she'll be playing with her littlest pet shop dolls, and she'll be humming that song sometimes. But she knows quite a few songs that I know. But she had a friend over to our house, and they're playing. And the friend came over, and she saw this stuff on our walls, and drums, and star quilts, and beadwork, and she said, Sapphire, let's play Indian. And Sapphire said, you can't play Indian, you have to be one. So, I thought that was pretty cool. There's a shift for you. But think about that. Is it okay for folks to dress up as Indians at Halloween? So next week, when folks come trick-or-treating, see how many Indians you see. But go to the next one. This was on display at a Helena toy store just 2 years ago, downtown, a little Indian costume. And so one of my colleagues actually went and visited with the store owner about, what's the deal with this Indian costume? And it's interesting. So here's some more examples of historic road signs. I travel all across the state of Montana doing workshops. Superintendent Juno likes to joke around with me. She says, Mike, I think one of your goals is to drive on every road in Montana. And I'm almost there. But this one here, I'll just come up here and point out the bias. I meant to do that. So I'm being hostile. It's like, he's talking hostile Blackfeet. Who's Blackfeet in here, by the way? Mike, you're hostile. Like a hostile guy. But it's funny, it's like you see this stuff embedded in these signs, and these are, this last year I take these, and go to the next one. Here's another one. This is right off of I-90, and it's talking about the threat of hostile natives. And just that hegemony just embedded within. These folks weren't hostile, they're freedom fighters. They're defending their homeland, for they have done for thousands of years. Go to the next one. There's me trying to look hostile. That's my colleague, Julie. This is the Shield River Valley. Anybody driven up there? A beautiful valley, one of my favorite drives. But it's talking about hostile Indian country via the Bonanza Trail there. But it's like following their way up to Yellowstone. But it's funny how that stuff is out there. So I like to have fun with it, though. So use it as a teachable moment. So hostile from whose perspective? And I told Mary I'd be quoting her brother Jim. Mary Lowen's sitting in the back. Her brother is James Lowen, author of Lies My Teacher Has Told Me. But I really like what he says about Thanksgiving, talking about more than any other celebration. Thanksgiving celebrates our ethnocentrism, that hegemonic perspective. So let's take a look at some of this. Now, an excellent book that was put out, and I think the lesson plan's in your packet. Is that right? 1621, A New Look at Thanksgiving. They consulted with Native Americans. These are the questions they asked. What did you learn from the first one? What kind of images come to mind? It's like in classrooms all across America, what happens at Thanksgiving time? What do teachers do? Yeah, the beads and feathers, and have a little meal. And it's, I'm all for the meal part. But it's just that perpetuation of bias. Indians looking the same way. So here's part of the website, talking about there was no popcorn and cranberry sauce on the menu. We don't even know if they ate turkey. And so this is an interesting deal, but I thought this is a kind of a funny picture here. They're getting along, but it's designed for kids. But it's really got some excellent information. So go to the next one. So here's some myths or fact. First Thanksgiving occurred in 1621. Go to the next one. People came across the ocean on the Mayflower called pilgrims. And I really like that joke about Mayflower. I'm going to use that one. I'll quote you. Came seeking freedom of religion and new land. They first stepped foot on Plymouth Rock. I think there might be one more in this one. Nope, no. So go back. So all these are basically myths. And part of that lesson plan, this is from a lesson plan from a group called the Oyate. They're not quite true. Some of them may be true, but it's part of that national mythology. Some more. Pilgrims found corn. They didn't find corn, they stole corn. It should be written that way. Samoset appeared out of nowhere, along with Squanto. They became friends. Joined them at the first Thanksgiving. Pilgrims invited the Indians to celebrate. Well, that's not quite true, right? Because the so-called pilgrims were, having a harvest ceremony, and one of the things that old European folks used to do was fire off their muskets, and that's what they were doing, and that's what the native tribes came over to check that out. What's going on over here? And there was a whole bunch of armed men that came to check it out. And so once they saw they were having a feast, let's go get some food. They went out and got some deer, I think, and brought them back, and they had quite a good meal. But it wasn't quite the first Thanksgiving the way we think about it. These are some of the myths. So how did the Wampanoag view the settlers? Thought they were oddly dressed. Had animal-like hair in their faces, kind of like this. Handkerchiefs, thought that, the old, that concept, put that stuff in your pocket and keep carrying it around with them. What's wrong with these people? They would trade valuable items for cheap furs. treated their children strangely, and thought the settlers were dirty and didn't bathe enough. And so that's another perspective, right, that you probably don't read about in the textbooks. What did the Wampanoag think of the settlers? And so what I like what James Lowen states, he talks about correctly taught, the issues of the era, the first Thanksgiving, could help Americans grow more thoughtful and more tolerant rather than more ethnocentric. And I think that's one of the goals of Indian Ed for All, is just to look at things from different perspectives. And that's why, I'm just honored here to hear about your perspectives and, increase my own knowledge. So, one of the things we put out from OPI, the Tribal Histories Guide, the governor and the legislature actually granted $2 million to the tribes a few years ago to write their own tribal histories. And then they gave those to OPI, and then we developed curriculum around it. And so here's what the book looks like. It was developed by Julie June. It's got primary source documents. It's got a DVD with the Indian lawyer Dan Decker talking about sovereignty. It's got Anna Whiting Sorrell talking about contemporary Indian issues. But it's neat to see how the teachers are using this in classrooms all across the state of Montana now, which is pretty exciting. Another resource we've developed is called the Framework, and it's all about how to implement Indian Ed for All. It's written by Dr. Tammy Elser, but I really like what she says. It moves us from either or to a both and more. Using American Indian content to get at these skills, these knowledge, this knowledge that these students have to learn anyway. So why not use some American Indian content? Why not use some Blackfeet stories, some Crow stories? One of the resources I really like that was put out that I think is pretty cool is these ones called Montana Skies. Anybody seen these? One's about Crow, one's about Blackfeet, talking about astronomy and traditional star knowledge.
I see them.
You did?
Yeah, in 4th grade class.
Cool, so they showed it right there. That makes me feel good, all right. What'd you think?
Yeah, awesome.
Give them a thumbs up? All right. Very good. And so, what the framework's talking about policy, professional development, how to review materials, so they know how to evaluate materials like the Marsh book, talks about mapping the curriculum and how to integrate this into the curriculum in a seamless way. And so, it's talking about this. That film you showed us gave us the context. And that's what we talked about. What was the concept we want to teach? Relationships, power, justice. What's the content? The essential understandings, or whether it be social studies, history, literature, science. What are the skills we want our students to know? But then I talk about that context. What was the place? What was going on in that era? And one of the things we talk about with Indian Ed for All, especially talking about the past, we say we want to move from beyond blame, shame, and guilt. Because none of us in that room caused those issues to happen. And none of us in this room. And it's like, but to honestly take a look at it from a more inclusive perspective, I think will help heal us up. And we're still working on that. Here's a recent document that we put together called Birthright. And is Ann still here? She's not. Ann Dionisi teaches reading and stuff. But I told her I'd try and get her a copy of this.
The PDF is already up on, and I have a copy.
So you got a copy?
PDF is up on the web already.
But this is all about Montana Indian poetry. And just go to the next slide. Here's the poets in here. Just powerful writing. Minerva Allen, Heather Cahoon, Victor Charlo, Jennifer Green, Richard Littlebear, Joe McGeesick, Henry Reelbird, Lois Redell, M.L. Smoker, who works at OPI, and James Welch. These are powerful thinkers, indigenous knowledge coming forth in these poems. And I really like what my friend Joe McGeesick said. And imagine students all across the state of Montana using this book in classrooms and thinking about these thoughts. Is the world a better place because of me? What difference am I going to make? What difference am I going to make for future generations? And so in that, I thought I'd read a poem from a friend of mine, Henry Reelbird, who was the Montana Poet Laureate a couple years ago, and learned a few greetings in Crow. Yishoda. Who's Crow, by the way? Milo over there. Henry also taught me the word for tennis shoe in Crow. I said, what is that word? He said, Adidas. Another bad joke, sorry. I actually told that joke at the Crow Tribal Ed Summit, kind of like 400 Crow people, so about half of them laughed. The other half were laughing at me. But here, this is a poem, it's called Thought, and it's by Henry Reelbird. Thought is like a cloud. You can see through shadow to see nothing, but you can see shadow when it touches something you know. like that cloud shadow touching the wolf-teeth mountains. When the clouds touch the mountain's top, our word is high, the wind is good when you're among the clouds. Blurred ground among fog, you are close to he who first did everything, said my grandfather owns painted horse. We are but nomads asking for nothing but the blessing upon our Mother Earth. We are born as someone new. So then we have to be taught the good from the bad. What is good, we want you to know. What is good, we want you to use. And that way you are a person. And those are some thoughts from Henry Ruber. That's powerful. And then we have discussion questions go along with that. What was he talking about here? What's this mean? How can you relate it to your own life? And so that's some of the neat curriculum that we bring together. Here's a quote from Daryl Kipp, talking about why Indian Ed for All is so important. Talking about the children of tomorrow, that different point of view, more honest perspective that includes Indian points of view. And one of the things we just developed at OPI that I think is really exciting is a unit on traditional use of tobacco. And it's a powerful unit looking at how different tribes use tobacco for ceremonial purpose versus recreational purposes. Put together some facts. I think I emailed that to you, didn't I, Holly? And it's got a little video clip of Philip Whiteman Jr., Northern Cheyenne, talking about a traditional trickster story. And we taped that, and he's telling that story, and it's all about buffalo and, not raccoon, but help me out with this. I can't remember who else was in the story.
Just make something up.
No, I'll just make it up. Was it beaver? I can't remember. Buffalo porcupine. It's porcupines that shoot the needles, right?
Yeah.
All right, so it's buffalo and porcupine, but it's an online video about 5 minutes long, but it's a traditional trickster's tale, but we kind of aligned that with how commercial tobacco companies are like a modern day trickster. And they're tricking us, here, this is good for you, have this, but yet how much damage that does to you. But then how to, use tobacco as a relative, something that's sacred for ceremony versus just that recreational part. And so I think that's a powerful curriculum we designed. And here, I like to quote my friend Cal Gilbert, when thinking about Indian Ed for All, keep the students sacred, not the system. And I think that's one of the goals. In Dakota, the word for children is wakanja. And it basically means that they're a sacred, powerful, mysterious gift. And think about our kids that way. I have to remind myself that I have to think of that way, even when I don't want to get up in the morning for school. But it's they're powerful, they're sacred gifts, and I think that's one of the goals. And so the essential understandings talk about diversity amongst the tribes, talk about cultures, traditional beliefs, values still practiced today, history from native perspectives, and that concept of sovereignty. And sovereignty is what makes Indian people unique from all other minority groups in this country. African Americans don't have it, Asian Americans don't have it, but as a member of a federally recognized tribe, we have a unique legal and political relationship with the federal government. And OPI tries to honor that by working with tribes on nation-to-nation relationships, or at least government to government. And so if you want to know where some of our resources are, visit our website, check out Indian Education for All. We've got all kinds of curriculum resources, online videos, and I encourage you to check it out. There's a lot of good information there. So that's Jennifer.
Feel free to call me or Mike. Mike's always busy though, but feel free to call if you ever have any questions. If you want to brainstorm about something, especially I make proposement a lot, so I'm looking at this group and say they're all the wisdom teachers, some of those teachers over there. But anyway, call me, email me. I'm happy to do whatever I can to support the efforts of Indian education in our schools all over the state.
Good, and just thank you, Jennifer. And I just want to share, we also have a conference coming up in February.
We do have a conference coming up in February. Thank you, Mike. It's our Indian Education Best Practices Conference, the 7th annual. You saw a quote from James Lowen. He is going to be our keynote speaker. I will have the registration and conference proposals electronically available online sometime around Thanksgiving. And so make sure to register early. As far as getting a hotel, if you decide to stay for the 2 nights, or the 1 night, about that. If you know of someone who's doing an exemplary job promoting Indian education in the state of Montana, think about nominating them for the Advocacy Award. So hope to see you there in February, but hope to see you before that anyway, just so I can be in schools.
And just thank you, Jennifer, for that. And, just encourage you to, work with tribes. You got an excellent resource here in higher ed, Brandy Foster. Brandy, give a wave. It's like she works with all the university systems, working on Indian education issues. And so and there's us at the K-12 level, but there's a lot of folks in this room who are good partners to collaborate with. And so I'll leave you with this. I learned this from a buddy of mine, and he said, Mike, when you go out to conferences, and you're with a Native American group, he said, a neat thing to do is, especially if you're out with a bunch of Indian buddies, he said, you go to one of those fancy restaurants where you got to put your name in there. He said, say your last name is War. And so when they call you, they'll say, War Party at 4. So try that out if you're in a conference with your Native American buddies. So, but thank you for listening, and I appreciate it, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. And thanks for the food.